The night was alive with the soft murmur of voices and the clinking of glasses as the wealthy elite gathered by the lakeside at the prestigious Albright estate. Strings of twinkling lights reflected on the still water, casting a golden hue over the manicured gardens. Guests in shimmering gowns and perfectly tailored suits mingled under the glow, their laughter blending seamlessly with the gentle melodies played by a live string quartet. In the midst of the opulence, Sofia moved quietly, her uniform a plain white shirt and black slacks, marking her as one of the event's staff. She carried herself with grace, her tray of sparkling beverages balanced carefully in her hands. Though her expression remained calm, her heart raced with the pressure of navigating the bustling crowd. Little did Sofia know, this seemingly ordinary evening would soon unravel into an unforgettable night that would forever change her life. The evening seemed perfect as Sofia weaved through the crowd, her movements precise and purposeful. The guests paid her little attention, their focus on champagne glasses and glittering conversations. Yet, the night's harmony was about to be shattered. "Watch it!" a sharp voice rang out, slicing through the ambient chatter. Sofia turned to see Miranda Hayes, the wife of a prominent tech mogul, standing before her. Draped in a designer gown that glittered like liquid gold, Miranda exuded an air of superiority. Her eyes scanned Sofia with an unmistakable disdain. "I'm so sorry," Sofia said softly, stepping aside to let Miranda pass. Miranda paused, her lips curling into a mocking smile. "Do you always walk around like you belong here? Because you don't." Her entourage, equally adorned in designer couture, tittered in agreement. Sofia bit her lip, the sting of humiliation settling in her chest, but she kept her composure. She turned to offer a glass of champagne to another guest, only to accidentally brush Miranda's arm. A small splash of champagne landed on Miranda's dress. The collective gasp from the nearby guests was deafening. Miranda froze, her hand flying to the damp spot on her gown. Her eyes blazed with fury. "Are you blind?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the room. "I'm so sorry," Sofia stammered, setting her tray down and grabbing a napkin. She reached forward to help, but Miranda stepped back, her glare icy. "Sorry isn't enough," Miranda hissed. "Do you even know how much this gown costs?" "Of course you don't. You probably can't afford the hemline." The crowd began to murmur, amusement flickering in their eyes as they watched the scene unfold. One of Miranda's friends leaned in with a sly grin. "Maybe she needs a lesson in etiquette." Miranda's expression shifted, her lips curling into a malicious smile. "You're absolutely right." Before Sofia could react, Miranda placed a perfectly manicured hand on her shoulder and shoved her backward. Sofia stumbled, her shoes slipping on the edge of the wooden dock. The world tilted as Sofia fell into the lake. The icy water shocked her senses, the weight of her clothes pulling her down as she struggled to resurface. Above her, laughter erupted, cruel and unforgiving. Sofia gasped for air, her vision blurred by a mix of water and tears. Miranda brushed her hands off theatrically, as if completing a mundane task. "Maybe next time you'll learn to be more careful," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Sofia reached for the dock's edge, her fingers slipping on the wet wood as the laughter above her intensified. Her cheeks burned with a mix of cold and humiliation. The sparkling lights of the estate now seemed harsh, their glow mocking her as she fought to regain her balance. But just as despair began to creep in, the hum of an engine cut through the chaos. A sleek black car rolled up to the estate, its arrival commanding attention. The laughter quieted, replaced by murmurs of curiosity. Sofia, still clinging to the dock, turned her head toward the commotion. Little did she know, salvation had just arrived in the form of Mason Adler, the young and enigmatic CEO whose reputation for defying expectations was second only to his business acumen. The sleek black car came to a stop on the estate's driveway, its polished surface reflecting the warm glow of the surrounding lights. The murmurs among the guests grew louder as the driver's door opened and Mason Adler stepped out. Tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, Mason exuded an effortless confidence that silenced the crowd. His sharp features and commanding presence immediately drew all eyes to him. Yet, his gaze was fixed solely on the dock, where Sofia struggled to climb out of the icy water. A hush fell over the gathering as Mason approached, his footsteps deliberate and echoing against the wooden planks of the dock. He stopped, his expression hardening as he took in the scene. The trembling young woman soaking wet, the mocking faces of the crowd, and the smug satisfaction on Miranda's face. "Who pushed her?" Mason's voice was sharp, calm yet laced with an authority that made everyone freeze. Silence hung heavy in the air, the weight of Mason's words pressing down on the crowd. Miranda, who had thrived on attention moments earlier, now hesitated. Her confident smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty as Mason's gaze bore into her. "Oh, Mason, darling," she began with a practiced laugh. "It was just a harmless little joke. She's fine, no harm done." Mason's eyes narrowed, his expression icy. "A joke?" he repeated, his tone colder than the lake water. "Tell me, Miranda, how exactly is shoving someone into a freezing lake amusing?" Miranda faltered, her confidence cracking under his scrutiny. "I didn't mean anything by it," she muttered, her voice losing its edge. "She's just a server," another guest interjected weakly, but Mason cut them off with a sharp glare. "She's a person," Mason said firmly, his voice like steel. "What you did wasn't a joke. It was humiliation, cruelty disguised as amusement." The crowd stood in stunned silence, the weight of Mason's words sinking in. Then, with unwavering determination, Mason straightened and turned back toward the group. His voice rang out, calm yet powerful. "Let me make something very clear," he said, his gaze locking onto Miranda. "Sofia isn't just some server. She's my girlfriend." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, the declaration leaving them wide-eyed. Even Sofia, still sitting on the edge of the dock, looked up in disbelief. Miranda's face paled as she stammered. What? Mason, you can't be serious." "I am," Mason interrupted, his tone firm. "She means more to me than anyone here, and I won't let any of you treat her like she's beneath you." The silence that followed was deafening. Sofia, overwhelmed by his words, watched as Mason shrugged off his suit jacket and tossed it aside. Without hesitation, he climbed down into the lake, the cold water soaking through his trousers. "Sofia," he said gently, his voice softening as he extended a hand toward her. "Let me help you." Sofia hesitated, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. But the steady reassurance in Mason's gaze broke through her reluctance, and she finally reached out. With surprising care, Mason pulled her out of the water, his strong arm steadying her as they climbed back onto the dock. The guests watched in stunned disbelief. Mason Adler, the celebrated young CEO, soaking wet and standing beside a drenched server, or rather his girlfriend, was an image none of them could have predicted. Mason guided Sofia to a nearby bench, retrieving a towel from a server and wrapping it around her shoulders. "Here," he said softly. "This should help." The crowd remained frozen, their faces etched with a mix of shock and disbelief. Miranda, who moments ago had radiated confidence, now seemed to shrink under Mason's piercing gaze. She stammered incoherently before retreating into the background, her entourage following suit. Mason turned to Sofia, who was still clutching the towel around her shoulders, her expression unreadable. Without another word, he placed a reassuring hand on her back and gently guided her away from the prying eyes of the crowd. As they walked toward a quieter part of the estate, Sofia couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had just happened. The cold air bit at her damp skin, but it was nothing compared to the storm of emotions raging within her. Sofia clutched the towel tightly, her lips trembling, not just from the cold, but from the humiliation she had just endured. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mason's expression darkened as he turned back to the crowd. His voice rang out, sharp and unwavering. "Enjoying yourselves?" No one answered. The earlier air of superiority and laughter had vanished, replaced by an uneasy silence. Wrapped in the warmth of the towel Mason had given her, Sofia still felt the sting of humiliation lingering in her chest. The cold from the lake water was nothing compared to the cold stares and laughter that had pierced through her just moments ago. Sitting on the bench, her fingers gripped the towel tightly, as if it could shield her from the emotional weight of the evening. Mason stood nearby, his suit trousers damp and his sharp gaze scanning the crowd. The air around them was heavy with tension, the once lively party now subdued into an awkward silence. But Sofia's thoughts were elsewhere, tangled in a whirlwind of emotions she couldn't fully process. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice low and trembling. "Why did you say that?" Mason turned to her, his brow furrowing slightly. "Say what?" "That I'm your girlfriend," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "Why would you do that? Was it to humiliate them? Or was it for me?" Mason exhaled slowly, his gaze softening. "Because it's the truth, Sofia," he said. "I've felt this way for a long time, but I was too much of a coward to admit it. Not to you, and not to anyone else." Sofia's brow furrowed, confusion mixing with skepticism. "How could you have felt that way for a long time? You barely know me." Mason hesitated, glancing away before meeting her gaze again. "I've known you longer than you think," he admitted quietly. "The first time I saw you was months ago at the community center. You were helping a group of kids paint a mural on the wall. You had paint smudged on your face, and you were laughing like you didn't have a care in the world." Sofia's lips parted in surprise. "The community center? You were there?" He nodded. "I was there as a donor. My family sponsored the renovation, and I stopped by to check on the progress. But when I saw you..." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't look away. You were so different from anyone I've ever known. Genuine, kind, completely unguarded." Her heart ached at his confession, but she couldn't stop the doubt creeping in. "If you felt that way, why didn't you say anything then?" Mason ran a hand through his damp hair, frustration flickering across his face. "Because I was scared. Scared of how my family would react, of what my world would do to someone like you. I thought keeping my distance was the best way to protect you." Sofia looked away, her thoughts swirling. Part of her wanted to believe him, but the pain of the evening still lingered. "You don't get to decide what's best for me," she said quietly, her voice firm despite the tears threatening to spill. "I've been standing on my own for a long time. I didn't need saving tonight." Mason nodded, his jaw tightening. "I know you didn't need me to save you, but I needed you to know how much you mean to me. Whether you believe me or not, that's the truth." Sofia's voice softened but remained steady. "I need time," she said, rising from the bench. Mason's shoulders sagged slightly, but he nodded. "Take all the time you need," he said softly. As Sofia walked away, Mason stood rooted in place, watching her disappear into the distance. The community center buzzed with activity as volunteers prepared for the upcoming fundraiser. Sofia moved between tables, organizing supplies, and offering her quiet support to the others. Though she wore a soft smile, her thoughts were far from the present. The events of the party replayed in her mind, from the humiliation she had endured to Mason's unexpected declaration. She shook her head, trying to push the memory aside. "Focus on the task," she muttered to herself. The sound of tires crunching on gravel broke her concentration. Turning toward the entrance, her breath caught as Mason stepped out of a sleek but understated car. He wasn't dressed in his usual sharp suits. Instead, he wore a crisp white shirt and dark jeans, looking more casual and more nervous than she'd ever seen him. In his hands, he carried a small bouquet of wildflowers, their bright colors standing out starkly against the gray of the cloudy day. The sight of him made Sofia's heart race, though she tried to keep her composure as he approached. "Mason," she said, her tone cautious. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he said simply, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Sofia crossed her arms, her guard going up. "If this is about the party, it's about more than that," Mason interrupted gently. "I came to apologize, and to tell you the truth. He extended the bouquet toward her, his hands trembling slightly. "These aren't from some fancy florist. I picked them myself. They reminded me of you. Beautiful, natural, and full of life." Sofia hesitated, her gaze shifting between the vibrant bouquet and Mason's earnest expression. "Why now?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, caught between frustration and hope. Mason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I'd made a mistake," he admitted. "I thought I was protecting you by keeping my distance. I was scared of how my family would react, of what the people in my world would say about you. But that fear led me to hurt you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Sofia's grip on her clipboard tightened, her emotions warring inside her. "You don't get to hurt me and then just show up with flowers and expect everything to be okay," she said, her voice trembling. "I know," Mason said, his tone earnest. "I'm not asking for everything to be okay. I'm asking for a chance to prove that what I feel for you is real." The sincerity in his eyes made her chest tighten. Slowly, she reached out and took the bouquet from his hands, her fingers brushing against his. "You picked these yourself?" she asked, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Mason let out a soft laugh. "It took me an hour to find ones that weren't weeds." For days after Mason's heartfelt apology, Sofia found herself thinking about his words. He had been vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected, and it lingered in her mind. At the community center, surrounded by familiar faces, she began to realize how much Mason had become a part of her thoughts, and perhaps her heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mason returned to the center, his expression a mix of hope and trepidation. He found Sofia sitting quietly by the window, lost in thought. "I'm not here to rush you," he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I just wanted to remind you that no matter how long it takes, I'm here. I'll wait, Sofia, for as long as it takes." Sofia looked at him, her heart softening. "Mason, I've thought about everything, and maybe we do deserve a chance." His face lit up with joy, and for the first time in weeks, Sofia felt a glimmer of hope. From that moment, their bond grew stronger, leading to the day when Mason planned a simple yet heartfelt engagement celebration. For the first time in days, Sofia allowed herself to smile. "I still need time, Mason," she said, her tone steady but kind. "But maybe we have a chance." Mason's face lit up with relief, and he nodded. "I'll take whatever you're willing to give." As Sofia turned back to her work, Mason lingered for a moment, watching her with a newfound sense of hope. This time, he was determined to do things right. The community center courtyard was transformed into a simple yet heartwarming venue, adorned with strings of lights and wildflower arrangements. Friends, family, and volunteers gathered to celebrate Sofia and Mason's engagement, the atmosphere alive with laughter and joy. Unlike the grand parties Mason was accustomed to, this event radiated warmth and authenticity, a perfect reflection of the couple. Sofia stood under a small archway decorated with the same type of wildflowers Mason had brought her weeks before. Her dress was elegant yet understated, a soft pastel hue that complemented her natural beauty. She glanced toward Mason, who was standing a few feet away, dressed in a tailored suit that was noticeably less formal than his usual attire. His gaze was fixed solely on her, his eyes shining with a mix of admiration and gratitude. Sofia stood under the archway, her heart pounding as she looked at Mason. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she stepped forward. Each step felt like a leap of faith, but as she met his steady gaze, a wave of calm washed over her. "Mason," she began, her voice steady despite the emotions bubbling inside her, "you've shown me that love isn't just about grand gestures or words, it's about showing up every day even when it's hard. You've proven that to me, and I want to be by your side." Mason's face lit up, his emotions raw and visible. He squeezed her hand gently, his voice thick with feeling. "Sofia, you've given me more than I ever deserved. You've shown me the beauty of living a life with purpose and love. I promise to never let you down again." Cheers erupted from the crowd as Mason reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple yet elegant ring. Sliding it onto Sofia's finger, he smiled, his heart full. Sofia returned his smile, her joy reflected in her eyes. As the celebration unfolded, Mason extended his hand toward Sofia, guiding her onto the makeshift dance floor. Under the soft glow of string lights and a canopy of stars, they moved in harmony to a gentle melody, their steps unhurried as if the world had faded away, leaving only the two of them. "You know," Sofia said, resting her head on Mason's shoulder, "I didn't need you to save me. I've always been strong enough to stand on my own." Mason chuckled, his voice warm and tender. "I know, Sofia. That's what I love most about you. But I'm glad you're letting me stand with you." She lifted her head to meet his gaze, her eyes shining. "I'm glad too. You've made my world brighter." Mason leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "And you've given mine meaning." In that moment, surrounded by their loved ones, Sofia and Mason knew they had found something worth fighting for. A love that was real, resilient, and stronger than anything that had come before. As the stars shone brightly over Sofia and Mason's new chapter, their story reminds us of the power of love, resilience, and the beauty of finding someone who truly sees us for who we are. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and let us know your favorite part in the comments below. For more heartfelt and inspiring stories, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and remember, love has the power to overcome any challenge when it's real. See you in the next story.